What's up, users? This is Masterfeja here with another Force of Will video. And I'm actually in a super good mood today, so I want to show you guys my new, well, one of my two new Gill Alhama'At decks. And I actually just finished putting this thing together yesterday. Now, yesterday in the stream of this crazy thing we call time to when I recorded this video. So this might actually be coming out a week, a month, 3 million years after I made this deck. That's okay because apparently Gill Alhama'At is like super old, so he'll still be relevant. I hope that we get to see kind of like a transition between the new Gill, which I've said in many videos, which you can't see anymore because they're gone until, you know, YouTube puts them back on. Fingers crossed, my peeps. So we have the new Gill, which I've said a bunch of times before is this Gill. And I hope that there's going to be one in the subsequent sets that gets between that Gill and this Gill. Oh, also, by the way, if you guys didn't notice, in my Freyla deck, I have a new mat. It's not new, again, in the stream of time, but I never bought any actual boxes for... Actually, no, I did get boxes for Return of the Dragon Emperor. I guess I just never did the pre-release for it, so... Okay, so the main gimmick behind this deck is that one thing I noticed in the cards that are currently in rotation, once they got rid of all the stuff from Alice block, so one specific card that jumps to mind is, or two I guess, are Guinevere, the Jealous Queen, or the Queen of Jealousy, I can't remember her actual name, and of course one of the greatest cards for darkness ever, Soul Hunt. Now, the one thing that those two cards have in common is that they essentially let you discard from your own hand. Please, if you guys know other cards, and I'm just ignorant because I don't have full play sets of every single set currently in Lapis Cluster, and of course, I think I've got at least pretty close to a full play set of most of the cards from Ancient Knights so far. I'm planning on getting one more box, but again, I haven't really been doing any unbox videos just because it seems like even people who aren't really crazy in the Force of Will community are doing it. And that's completely fine, man. Like it's pretty much like crack cocaine when you open those packages, and the art in this game is one of the major reasons why I started playing it. And of course, the mechanics and the community kind of carried it forward for me. So there aren't any cards aside from the one that I'll show you guys in the deck profile in a sec here, that do that sort of thing, right? Like that let you discard cards from your own hand so that you can work stuff out of grave. And unfortunately, because almost everybody and their grandmother knows the whole Abdul, what is it? Oh, what's the name of my crazy favorite Cthulhu? I know it starts with an A. Come on, crazy Cthulhu, Azathoth. Everybody knows the combination with sacking Abdul from, I think he was from Curse? He wasn't from Curse. Was he from Curse? Anyway, so Abdul from one of the first sets from Lapis Cluster for 4 to grab Azathoth from hand and play him onto the field. And if you guys saw, I think it was in the Charlotte deck, either the Charlotte deck or in my, no, it wasn't in my original, Feats Sing deck. Anyway, so I came up with a deck with Dayman where we would fill up the grave with Azathoths and then with Soul Hunts and other stuff like that, and then kind of fish them out with either the I think it's Azazel or whatever, the Demon of the Two Moons, Lord of the Two Moons, or the Shadow Doppelganger. So this deck essentially works with using the Darkness Resonance off of Gill Alhama'At to make sure that we get ancient magic counters, and then we use those ancient magic counters to try to cheat Azathoth onto the field as quickly as possible. And I will show you guys how that works in a second. Let's start with, let's start with our stones. Let's be a little bit risky this time. So the deck is only 2 colors, black and green. Sorry, no, 3 colors. What the hell am I talking about? Black, green, and blue. So I run 4 magic stones of Deep Depths, blue, black. Nothing fancy here. I have, actually this isn't one of the full arts. I keep all my full arts in my other Gill Alhama'At deck that I'll show you guys, and it's more traditional to what you guys have seen in the past for Gill Alhama'At decks, but with funny little combinations. Then I've got 4 magic stone of Black Silence, so make sure you guys don't talk too loud because it's super silent. And then I run 2 ancient magic stones, which Honestly, the only reason I don't have any white in the deck, the only reason that I have it is because I can use mana counters to fix my colors in case I get unlucky and I get 3 greens in a row and nothing else, and I need to play some blue or something early on, because a good chunk of the deck is blue, but there are a few green spells that I need the green for. Okay, let's start with Chants. As I've said in my previous videos, I am absolutely crazy, like Victorian style, in love with the new idols. So I run 2 idols of Willpower, which is 1 colorless addition, and for 1 colorless you banish this card and gain 500 life and draw a card. So because this deck doesn't really start going nutso bananas until like turn 4 or 5, you need to be able to keep that life up. Then I run 3 Idols of Magic. Same thing, 1 drop colorless addition. You pay 1 colorless, banish this card, produce 1 color of any color. So this is for our mana fixing, even though we have black in every single stone, and then it's just for like, oh, you know, it's turn 2 and I don't have the 2 blue that I need or the 2 green. So this is what that's for. And then banish this card, put into a graveyard. When this card is put into a graveyard from the field, I swear sometimes I produce words that aren't there. Draw a card. So mana fixing and continuous draw, which is super important to this deck, and you guys will see why later. So I run 3 of the Idols of Magic. Then, and here's another one of the beauticiously amazing full arts that I pulled in Ancient Knights. I run 3 of the Spinning Aqua Soul. It's a 1-drop blue quick cast chant. Put target chant from your graveyard into your hand. And essentially what this allows me to do is, anytime that I only draw into one of my big major chants, I can keep recycling them. And specifically for 1 chant that I'll show, or technically 2, but 1 chant really just keeps the cycle going over and over again that I'll show you guys in a sec. So that's 3 of these Spinning Aqua Souls. Oh geez. Oh, I think I organized these by cost instead of by chants and addition, or chants and resonators. Okay, cool. I guess we're gonna jump into resonators for a bit. We'll do this just progressively upwards for this video instead of additions and resonators and then, or sorry, additions and chants and then resonators. Sorry guys, I'm a hot mess in this episode. Whoa. So I run 3 Tama Familiar of Holy Wind, which is a 2/2 familiar cat resonator, which I don't think really matters because I don't think you can make cat decks yet. Though you can make bear decks, and I've got a buddy who made it, which is pretty funny. So she's 1 green, and when this card enters the field, to draw a card, banish this card, and it deals 200 damage to target resonator. So this is actually good for twofold. 1, because obviously it gives us the additional draw, and it's a 1 cost like blocker that we can use. And then in 2, I actually run some of the destroy damage resonator cards in this deck, so you just pop her for 200, deal damage to something significantly stronger, and then we'll use this next card coming up. So 3 of the Tamas. Then I run 3, and another amazing full art. Look at that. Just look at that. Lethal Arrow. And I've actually got 2 resonators in this deck that pop for damage. So the Tamas, and then you can do this turn 2 if you have both of the wind and darkness on the field, which you hypothetically should have. So you drop Tama, draw a card, pop Tama for 200 on target resonator, and then you quick cast this 1-drop darkness chant to destroy target damaged resonator. So this is pretty good. Oh shoot, I've got 2 full arts. Never even saw that. So I run 3 of the lethal arrows. It's kind of funny that I don't actually run any lethal arrows in my Freyla deck because I don't really have any resonators that do direct damage to my opponent, or sorry, to my opponent's resonators. Then I've got 1 statue of the Sacred Temple, and I don't know if I've said this in videos yet, but I honestly think this thing should be called like a super rare, an SSR or something like that, because like in 5 boxes that Damon and I have opened so far, we've seen only 3 of these things. So at this point in 5 boxes, we've seen more J-Rulers than we have this thing. And that's bonkers, uncool craziness. Like, what? A 2-drop rare colorless addition is more rare than the actual like J-Rulers? That's nuts. Anyway, so It's a 2-drop colorless edition, and it's got the ability Magic Stones you control produce any color, and then tap one of every color, banish this card, put a 1 or a 10/10 Light Angel Resonator token with flying into the field. So again, if you needed that final swing for game and you know your opponent is not going to put enough Resonators, you leave enough mana open, which in any deck that runs Ancient Magic shouldn't be that difficult for that previous turn that you're going to cast this thing, so it has the ability to attack the turn that you summoned it. You pretty much just use Ancient Magic spells against your opponent and then cast this thing during your opponent's turn to turn into an angel and then hit him during your turn. So but this thing is mostly for mana fixing, and it's just a phenomenal addition. I wish that it also had the ability that when it turned into an angel and you banish this card, that you got to draw a card, because I think this is the only one of the idols that doesn't draw you a card. But I guess that would just make it way too crazy good. So I run one of those. And then this is one of the promos I've actually been getting from the last few weeks of going to my local card shops. The Soul Debt. And I think, yeah, this one came from Echoes of the New World as well. So I've got one of the ones from the box that I opened recently, and then 2 of the promos from going to the store. So Soul Debt is a 1-wind, 1 colorless quick cast chant, and it's got the ability put target Resonator that was put into a field this turn onto the bottom of its owner's deck. So essentially we're using this to stall for the first like 3 or 4 turns. So if we're afraid turn 3 or 4 that, for instance, up against Dayman's deck, if you just summoned a Valentina from Return of the Dragon Emperor to pretty much swing and win, you're like, nope, bottom of the deck. And he's got some search in that deck, so it would only really stall you for 1 or 2 turns at most, but it's better than, hey, you know, put all those removed cards at the bottom of your deck and swing for like 20 bajillion. So I run 3 of these. Jeez, what is with my enunciation the last little while? I feel like I'm tripping on my words a little bit. So I run, ooh, not 4, 3. Most of the stuff in this deck is 3, not really running full blocks of almost anything. So I'm running 3 of this card from Vingolf 3, which is Shade Envoy of Darkness. It's a 6/4, 2 darkness Resonator, Spirit. And it's got, well, I mean, both abilities are actually useful in this deck just because of all the instances of this hitting the grave and then being recurring. We have banish this card, or tap, banish this card, deal 600 damage to target J/Resonator, and you gain 600 life. So if this thing was on the field, and you also had a lethal arrow in hand, and you wanted to kill some big baddie that was stronger than 600, you tap it, deal 600 to your opponent's creature, tap 1 more for the lethal arrow and kill it, and then you gain 600 life. But another cool combo with this card is that because it says target and it doesn't say opponent's Resonator, if this thing was to be quick cast killed or something like that, on the stack you could tap to make it deal 600 damage to itself, so you still get this 600 life without losing out on the Resonator for nothing. And then its secondary ability is a Resonance one, which is really cool because every single stone in this deck has darkness. So it's got a Darkness Magic Stone Resonance. You may pay 3. If you do, put this card from your graveyard into your hand. I think it would have been amazing if it was pay 3 to put it into the field, and I think that's fair, right? You're casting it for 1 more from the grave, but it goes to hand. I don't really see the points as it doesn't have an enter the field ability, but whatever. It's actually good. I've used it a few times in playtests, so you can use both. This isn't like the Darkness Wizard where you don't really want to use the resonance of removing cards off the top of your deck. So I run 3 of the Shade Envoy of Darkness. Now this is a card that I've seriously never seen played in any other deck, and I can kind of see why people are hesitant to play it, and it's almost even in the flavor text, right? Like it's, Lord Alhama'At is dead, and no matter what side I choose, I can't win. Oh well. And it's kind of sad because like she's one of the 7 Lumerians. I think she's the 4th. There was Mercury, Mars, and Sol, so she's Luna. So that being said, there should be 3 more released that we don't know of yet. But anyway, so she's, I thought she was a pretty cool lore card, and unfortunately, because a lot of people aren't really playing Gill Alhama'At that much anymore, her whole mana thing isn't that useful unless you wanted to use her in another deck where you wanted to use, you know, ancient magic spells like this deck, which also just happens to have Gill Alhama'At as the ruler, but that's just additional fluff. So she's a 3-drop, 2 blue and 1 colorless 8/8, which I think is really good for the curve. Will of Despair, which really doesn't matter, and Mana 4. Remove a mana counter from this card and produce blue. Spend this only to play Ancient Magic cards. Now the cool thing that I love that they did, that they could have just as easily made this card absolute rubbish if they decided to go ahead with, is the fact that they didn't make it tap to produce 1 blue, do it only once per turn kind of garbage. It's she hits the field, 4 mana counters, use them all at once if you want to, but all they do is produce for blue, which is great because the only 2 Ancient Magic spells in this deck are both blue. So the way that I usually like to play with this card is that I try to get her out as early as possible, which is turn 3, since I don't have crazy mana ramp in this deck. She hits the field with 4 mana counters. By that point, I've got 4 mana counters on Gill Alhama'At, 4 onto her. What I like to do is use the 4 mana counters off of her if I don't want to wait one more turn to get the perfect amount of stones and mana counters to be able to play the combo with Rising from the Depths. I'll use her 4 mana counters to be able to draw into additional cards using Ancient Knowledge. And then once I do cast the Rising from the Depths, I'll return this back to hand, awaken it for an additional 6, and then she'll hit the field again and get another 4 mana counters because the mana 4 is an enter the field ability, which is phenomenal because then I can use that to cast another Ancient Knowledge if I have it in my hand. So she exists in the deck because, I mean, she's a decently strong body, 8/8, and on top of that, she really helps to accelerate the ability to play the Awakened Rising from the Depths as early as possible, because I don't run Heartfelt Fire and I don't run the combo with Grizzle Ballesta in this deck to ramp to crazy amounts of Ancient Magic counters onto Gill Alhama'At super early game. So he's literally here just to tap for stones and get the 8 Ancient Magic counters. That's it. I would never flip him in this deck, and I never do anything crazy with him. So I run 3 of the Luna, Magician of the Moon Star, which is a bit of a misnomer because as anybody who knows anything about the space, there is no star on the moon. Though I'm pretty sure they haven't proven whether or not it's made out of cheese yet. So I run 3 of one of the only 2 Ancient Magic spells in this deck, which is Rising from the Depths. Now, anybody who hasn't had interrupts or hand control and stuff like that in this game has known that this card has been a ridiculous bane to anyone with a crazy board presence pretty much since Curse. Well, not pretty much, since Curse, because that's when it came out. So it's got, it's a 4-drop Ancient Magic spell with an Awakening of 6, and you really want to play it for the full 10 when you play it. That has 2 blue and 2 colorless, Ancient Magic spell, obviously. And it has the ability to return all Resonators to the owner's hand, which is what works well with these. And an Awakening of 6, which says you may put up to 3 water Resonators from your hand into your field. Now, this is a thing that, I mean, like, I could just as easily look it up on Google, but I'll just ask you guys. Does the Awakening trigger at the same time as the first ability? So would I hypothetically be able to play the mana counters off of this, then return it to hand because of the first half of the ability, and then play it because of the Awakening? Or does it all trigger at the same time, and then this thing goes into my hand pretty much at the same time as it's resolving for me to put water Resonators from my hand to the field? I'll look it up as well, but I like to have this little conversation. It's cool to see all the crazy dudes who know all the rulings and pretty much do judging and stuff like that. Also, a cool little thing you get, I can't remember which one was which, but you can see the different coloring on this one. This one's got a lighter trim at the top, and this one's got a darker trim. So one of these ones was from the pre-release, and one of them was from the actual booster packs from Curse. So I wonder if it's going to go the way of Pokemon, where they're going to be like, oh man, early on cards that have different coloration because of different releases, that's crazy bonkers expensive. I mean, Force of Will's on the rise. They still the only cards that are really busting over like the $50 mark are the Ubers for the rulers. So we'll see if this game acquires any particular notable value. And I run 3 Ancient Knowledges, and I'm actually currently borrowing these 3 Ancient Knowledges from my other Gill Alhama'At deck, which I will show you guys at a later time. So it is another 4-drop Ancient Magic Chant, which works again really well with Luna because I can just cast this for its value right off the mana counters from her entering the field. It's got Quick Cast, which is phenomenal because I can play it at any bloody time. And look at the top 5 cards of your deck. Put 2 cards from among them into your hand and put the rest at the bottom of your deck in any order. Now, you'll see later on that me having as many cards in my hand at any given time is super important because of the combinations I will be doing with one of the cards that is actually a promo for this month of September. So I run 3 of the Ancient Magic spells. Ancient Knowledge. Oh man, actually, and I was just watching the reposted Soul deck that I did as per request of one of our viewers, and I realized that when we were talking about Ancient Heartfelt Fire, for some reason Dayman called it Ancient Knowledge, and every time I watch that it bothers me. Alright, so I run 3 Feast on Mortals, which is another one of my 4 chant drops, 2 darkness and 2 colorless, and it has the following ability. As additional cost to play this card, banish a Resonator. This card deals damage equal to the banished Resonator's attack to your opponent, and you gain life equal to the banished Resonator's defense. So this is the same kind of gimmick that I was running for the Freyla deck that I posted earlier on, but this one works significantly better because with Azathoth being cheated onto the field, I can wait a turn, attack with him, kill something from declaring an attack. They'll probably block with something to have something else die from getting bodied into by a 20/20. And then at the end of turn, I'll tap 4 to play this, do 20 to them, and then I gain 20. And that's probably game by that point. Like, the finisher for this thing is in the truest sense of finisher. Like, I will almost never have to do Feast on Mortals with Azathoth twice. Like, by that point, I've already got crazy board presence, and I've probably been chipping away at them. So I run 3 of the Feast on Mortals. Then I run 3 of quite probably one of my favorite cards currently in rotation right now, other than maybe like Azathoth. And that is Valentina, Maiden of the Oceans. This one was originally released in the Vingolf 3, but they did a promo for Back to School, and I love this card. I love the fact that it's full art. I love that most of my favorite cards and rulers and all that stuff are in the background, and they're crazy like school motifs. You've got Soul right there. You've got Gill Lapis, Alazars, which I've never been a... No, wait, sorry, that's not Alazars. That's Mars. You've got Mars. You've got Feet Sing and Zero, Kaguya, Millium, that one ruler that nobody really likes from what's his face, Legacy Lost. You've got Charlotte, you've got Parisia, Alice, and of course the actual Resonator, which is Valentina. So she is a human Resonator, 12/12 for 4, for 4 colorless and 2 blue, which is ridiculously high, but again, we usually cheat her onto the field with Rising from the Depths, or just like make it so far into game that we can cast her from hand. And she's got the following ability. The first little gobbledygook doesn't really matter, but the second part is essentially the full mechanic of this deck, which is tap, discard a card, return target Resonator to owner's hand, which is crazy amounts of field control. And even crazier is tap, discard 3 cards, gain control of target Resonator. Wow. This and Trident are the only 2 cards that I know of right now. Wait, no, and KM are the only 3 cards that I know of that are take control of. Oh, and KM has a chance, so 4 cards that lets you take control of opponent's Resonators at this point. So the way that I like to play this card is I get it onto the field with Rising from the Depths Awakened, and then as soon as I pass turn to my opponent, if I've been using the Ancient Knowledges and the crazy amounts of draw that I've got in this deck, it allows me to sack 3 cards, hopefully one of the 3 being, Azathoth, and I take control of target opponent's creature, or I return something to their hand if I don't have enough cards in my hand, and I've essentially set myself up for a combo with this next card I will show you guys. I run 2 of the Valentina, the Crumbling illusion. So this is Valentina taking over Shion's body, though this is like on her last legs. This is from Echoes of the New World, because there's the one where she's in Shion's body, the red-black one that I know Dayman is a massive fan of. So she is 7, which is, oh my god, so expensive. 1 darkness, 1 blue, and 5 colorless for an 8/9. If she didn't have the ability she did, I'd honestly say this is just way too much. So she's Will of Despair, completely irrelevant, but she has, you may pay 1 less to play this card for each Resonator in grave, which with all of these sacrifice for abilities to put into grave cards in this deck, you will be able to play her for super cheap if you haven't just cast her straight to the field for the Awakening of Ancient, or sorry, from Rise of the Depths. And she has the final ability, which is the most important thing for this card. At the beginning of your turn, put a Resonator from your graveyard into your field. So your best possible combo is to have either 1 or 2 of these in hand, and the Valentina Maiden of the Oceans, when you awaken Ancient or Rising from the Depths, you drop them onto the field, and you drop your Valentina Maiden of the Oceans, and during your opponent's turn you tap her, sack a bunch of stuff, hopefully one of them is an Azathoth, and then next turn you get 2 cards from grave to field. And then really all you have to do is do a little maneuvering with some more discarding from hand with Valentina, and then next turn you swing and then feast on mortals and you win, and then you do some victory dances and some high fives all around, and everyone is happy except for potentially your opponent, because they're like, what? Discard and take control of my creatures? When did this become a thing again? And you're like, pay attention to the meta, bro. To the metapod, bro. And then the final card and the final Resonator in this deck is Azathoth, Hunter of Reality. And as I've boasted a bunch of times, anytime that I run this card in a deck, I run like always full arts, just because I think I've got like 8 or 9 of these things lying around. I pulled so many, I think I pulled like 3 Azathoths in pre-release for Curse, and then I pulled like another 3 or 4 in the box, and then Dayman pulled a bunch and he gave them all to me, and most of them were full arts, just like nuts. Like this is the full art that actually came in the Curse booster, and then I think this one came in Legacy Lost, because for some reason they decided, hey, let's do full arts of all of the super rares from the previous boxes, like full arts, not just textured. I don't know, it was a weird thing. But anyway, so Azathoth is the one of the strongest Resonators currently. There's that new Golem that just came out in Ancient Knights. It's also a 2020, but he's ridiculous, so don't worry about him. I think he's cheaper though. I don't know, I haven't looked at the Golems too close, but I think he's cheaper than 8. So he's a Resonator Human Cthulhu with limit 6, though we don't really care about the limit counters because he won't really be on the field for long enough for that to be a problem. If this card would be destroyed, you may remove a limit counter from it. Instead, if you do, remove all damage from it, so it pretty much can't die until all 6 limit counters are gone. But it is still susceptible to losing all abilities because of Charlotte's water transformation magic, which is one of the biggest reasons why this card became both amazing and then instantly nerfed right when it came out, because it came out in the same bloody set. Why would you make such a ridiculously crazy strong creature and then make the balancing counter to it just like immediately? Anyway, that's just me being butthurt about Azathoth not being greater. So whenever this card attacks or blocks, destroy target Resonator. It'd be cool if it had an enter the field ability as well, but then this thing would probably cost like 15 will. And then at the end of turn, if there are no limit counters on this card, destroy it. If you do, this card deals 2,000 damage to you. But again, because we're going to be sacking it on like literally the first or second turn it's on the field, that should not be an issue. Unless, for example, you use the combination that I have in my Rhea deck, where you turn it into a 0/1 Resonator with reduction, and then you play Alice's World of Madness, which essentially just keeps giving it the -2 just until it loses all 6 of its mana counters, though I highly doubt anybody's actually running that combo in any particular deck. And so essentially we fish this guy from grave, we put it onto the field. From most of my play tests, I end up getting 2 of them, and then what you can do is just wait until they're able to attack. Upon declaring attack, you destroy a target J/Resonator, and I think it's still J/Resonator unless they eroded it. I haven't had that brought up to my attention yet, so if it has, please give me a heads up in the comments. Then essentially, as soon as you've attacked, if you've got the available 4 mana for the Feast on Mortals, you just pop this thing, put it back in the grave. You did another 20 directly to your opponent, back to 20. So even if they're swinging for a lot and you're open, you should be fine. And then next turn, you just recur it with the Valentina, the Crumbling illusion anyway. So you've pretty much got continuous blockers and continuous ability to sack for ridiculous amounts of damage and ridiculous amounts of health gain. So I run 2 of the Azathoth's Hunters of Reality in the deck. Alright guys, that was my new Gill Alhama'At deck, my Sackety Sack Don't Talk Back deck. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I am in a continuous struggle to try to make Gill Alhama'At in new and interesting ways, and the version that I've showed you guys to date unfortunately has 2 major flaws, which is one of the things that Gill Alhama'At typically suffers from, and this is pretty much any deck that has grave recurrence or needs to have particular cards at hand, and that weakness, or those weaknesses unfortunately, are hand control, which you will see a lot of in competitive, and of course the dreaded barrier seal. Now, literally the only way you could work around that is if you get your combos off fast enough that it's not an issue, or one thing that I was actually thinking of putting in this deck as maybe a sideboard card, just because it would throw off the balancing a little bit if you had it built into the deck for every situation, is if you put in the Alice with the built-in God's Art as a Resonator from Echoes of the New World, and when you hit her onto the field, you say Barrier Seal. Barrier Seal can't be cast as long as this creature is on the field. And I think that's about it, guys. Tell me what you think of this new Gill Alhama'At deck that I made. Comments in the comment section. Look for the deck list in the description as always. Like, subscribe, and I will see you guys for the next deck profile. Let's keep supporting one another. I'll see you next time. Peace.